hopefully a horrible war is stopped in Palestine. That will stop lots of bombs being dropped on people who don't deserve it.
I mean,
funded by our companies, which is pretty awful already.
exactly. Yeah.
But
And our tax money, essentially, you know.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's all going. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a better way to solve it all.
Of course, diplomacy. You know, there's always. I mean, the military solution never worked in the past. It's never going to work in the future. But anyway, what about yourself? Do you believe in God? So of course we're here. You know, allowing people to learn about Islam and giving the free Qur'ans and literature, etc. Do you believe in God yourself?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, you can't really do my work and not.
Well, what work do you do?
I'm just a security supervisor at a hospital at the moment. But,
Okay.
You see people in the best and worst stages of life, and a few other things you see stop you believing in coincidences.
Yes. Okay. Can you share some one of those examples or incidents?
It's one of those things where always in that moment where you need to have the perfect example, it doesn't come to mind, and when I walk away 2 minutes later, the perfect example will pop in.
I'm with you.
I've seen some people abandoned, dying, left alone in the most awful. You know, they get dementia, the family can't cope. Maybe it's not their fault. All the children have been laid off or something like that, and they have they can't divert all their attention to look after their parent. It's not always an option here to behave the way that people do it in other parts of the world. Not with our high pressure society, but I've seen an amazing person come out of nowhere and stay with someone as they die. Occasionally I've seen miraculous returns to life.
Wow.
Occasionally I've seen a kind doctor not sign the wrong piece of paper. In your best interests is a phrase that can be misused to sort of consign you to a care home against your will, to force people into a home against their will, force their children to sell the home to care for it. It's social care. When it's done right by some good people, it's really, really good. When it's done wrong, it's really, really awful.
Of course, you know that. But you said you believe in God. Do you have a faith yourself?
I grew up having the Catholic faith forced down my neck as a child, you know, forced to do all the catechisms and at school where you have to confess on Sundays, so you make up different sins and then you
have to make them up.
You swap them with your friends each week.
Wow, they'll know you're just lying about it essentially.
Yes.
Or just making them up essentially. And have you looked into Islam? Have you looked into Islam throughout your years on this earth essentially?
I've learned a bit about it. I mean, I think it's not everything that everyone thinks about it is right. I mean, the whole thing about 4 wives, it's not that you have one in your bed on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, one on Wednesday. It's in the Crimean War, in the army, right, if I get killed, you marry my wife.
Okay.
So she stays in the caravan train and the army looks after her. If you get killed, I marry yours.
Okay.
Or if there's someone at the end of the street, I marry her. She's a widow. At parents' evening, there's someone to represent her kids if the landlord tries to bully her. It's not... like quite a lot of things. They were from the social contract of that time when you didn't have an NHS, you didn't have the health services that we have today.
I mean, on this particular issue, the Quran just allows Muslim men to marry up to 4 wives with a condition that they are just between them in what they spend on them financially and the time they spend with them as well. Of course, your heart, you only have one heart. You can't love each one of them in the same way, you know. Like your children, you may have one preference for one over the other, but in terms of what you can control, the financial spending on them is equal, and the time you spend with them as well. So if you can't be just, then the Quran also says marry only one. If you can't be just between them, but there are wisdoms and benefits behind, of course, that law being there, which you see obviously when those who don't agree with it end up having extramarital relationships, and that ruins them, and all the rest of it comes down to that. Exactly. So there is a wisdom behind it as well, but it comes with conditions, of course. You know.
Well, there are things that concern me, and I'll be frank about that. I mean, I've done quite a lot of community work around Bradford and Yorkshire. There's definitely something wrong with serial marrying of first cousins. You see it, doctors, Muslim doctors and consultants I know say it, but I mean, so that's a nettle that needs to be grasped. But I remember.
Jesus.
Yes, that's not antithetical to
That's
Islam.
not a problem. We believe
That's not
we
antithetical.
believe he was the way for his people. Yeah.
But I mean, also, I remember this TV show. Do we have too much Islam? Well, maybe we don't have enough. I mean, maybe we need a bit more respect for parents.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to not shunt people into an old folks' home at the first opportunity.
Thank you. So-
now, I know you can't have 21-year-old gets married. Suddenly, she's responsible for 2 or 3 screaming elderly people.
Of course,
I mean,
yeah.
I recently buried my mother after 18 months with motor neuron disease, and I thought, right, you can't be a 22-year-old. You get a girl, you get married, and suddenly you're responsible for that, or
Yeah.
2 or 3 versions of that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So look, we need to separate between culture and religion.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of these things which you may see in the Muslim communities, a lot of it is cultural.
FGM in Africa is not a Muslim thing.
Yeah,
They've done it whatever. They've done it before missionaries came.
Even this thing about a wife taking, being responsible for her in-laws, her husband's parents, etc. I mean, that the responsibility falls on his shoulders because it's his parents.
yes,
She
exactly.
takes care. She's therefore taking care of her husband and her family. Culturally, of course, there is that element to it. If a woman chooses to, of course, she'll be rewarded for this, but she's not obliged to.
No.
And a lot of it is culture.
I know women had their own money under Islam. They didn't have it under Christianity.
Of course,
I read a bit about that.
a lot of things like that. Even the ability to divorce.
Yes,
In Islam, women are allowed to divorce. In Christianity, it's particularly just if there has been indecency or the husband, has marriage or relations outside of marriage. And even then, if she is a divorcee, no one is allowed to marry her.
Yes,
So there's these sort of things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so Islam doesn't have these things. Woman there's no issue with marrying a divorcee. Some of the wives of the Prophet Muhammad were divorcees themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Widows.
Khadija was
Exactly. Exactly. So we have all these examples there, and Islam came to really honor and elevate the status of women in society and gave them rights before the West. They
got the right to divorce in the 1960s or something.
even
There's
inheritance and many other things.
There's a lot of junk around.
While they were still arguing here whether they have a soul and other things like that. All the
Yes, heard all that. No, it's really daft.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that we're quite as advanced as we like to think in the West.
know that. Have you ever read the Quran or had a chance to take a copy of the Quran?
I read the things from it in leaflets.
Okay.
I mean, I know the guy told me that please don't let this leaflet get scratched on the floor. I haven't washed my hands. I probably have to wash my hands.
This is a translation of the Quran. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay.
So this is an English translation. It's not the Arabic.
No, that's right.
Which I would need to be in a set of ablution for as well.
Sure.
But the translation you can read it. It's cover to cover. It's the complete copy from left to right like normal. If you have any questions, you can always pop back on a Saturday or message us online.
Do you have something, even like a paper bag, I can wrap this in? I feel like I shouldn't just stick
No,
it in my pocket.
it's not a problem. You can put it in your pocket. Yeah, it's for you to. It's for you to benefit from and read, etc. And thank you for obviously having that consideration.
I'll treat it thoughtfully.
But yeah, we're here every Saturday. If you have any questions,
That's really thoughtful.
you can always pop back. It's
Really-
been a pleasure. I know it's cold
Likewise.
today. Thank you for
No,
stopping.
really good of you to stop for me.
You take it and always stay optimistic. Nice.
Absolutely, yeah.
You take care.
Keep your fingers crossed.